Hello to everyone not watching Florida State LSU. My name is Connor Riley. We're going to recap Georgia's win over UT Martin last night and learn why, even though you get a second chance to make a first impression, you're probably not changing a lot of people's minds. Hello, everyone, and welcome into another edition of Connor in Coverage. My name is Connor Riley. Georgia comes away with a 48-7 win over UT Martin on Saturday night, week one of the season. Bulldogs start 1-0. It was not a perfect start. We'll get into that, some of the issues, the ups and downs from the evening there in Sanford Stadium. Did you get Georgia's first night game since the 2021 season, though I'm not sure if we're really fully on board of calling that a full night game, given the sun was still out well into the second half there. So fun to be back in Sanford Stadium. Fun to get to talk about real football. Had some great games, or at least some interesting games rather, to watch over the weekend. We'll touch on some of that here. Obviously, Florida State LSU playing right now as this game airs, and then Clemson Duke wrapping things up on Monday night there. Georgia will take on Ball State in week two, a 12 p.m. Eastern time kickoff Saturday in Sanford Stadium. But with that in mind, let's go ahead and open it up to winners and losers. We do this during the season. Again, this is not to say that someone is an actual loser. It's just in life, sometimes you have winners, sometimes you have losers, and the only difference is how the outside world treats you. And so with that in mind, I think our first winners, this position group really blew me away with how they played on Saturday night. And yes, all of this goes without saying. The competition level was not there for Georgia. There's nothing you can really do about that. It's an FCS program. All you can do is go out there and I think play your best. And I think some position groups did. And the UGA safeties in particular really stood out to me. It starts with Malachi Starks. That guy was all over the field, nearly had an interception. Probably should have come down with that, though it would have been difficult, but we've seen him come down with difficult interceptions before. Javon Bullard looked right at home in his safety spot. And Tyke Smith, to his credit, came up and made some impressive plays in the run defense, in the quick screen game that the UT Martin tried to get going. He did leave the game with an injury, but we got a chance to speak to him afterwards, and if that's the case, odds are he's probably fine and good to go there. And it didn't just stop with those first three guys, Starks, Bullard, and Tyke Smith. Kyron Jones comes up with the game's only turnover, intercepts a fourth quarter pass from UT Martin and returns it for a touchdown. Now, it did come off a tip pass, and Kirby Smart was quick to point that out. But an encouraging moment for a freshman defensive back who is probably eager to go in there and make plays. And hey, as Kirby pointed out, Jamon Dumas-Johnson did something similar in his first home game back in 2021, and we've seen Jamon Dumas-Johnson since develop into an All-American. That's not to say that Kyron Jones is going to follow that exact same track, but again, anytime you have someone that young out there making plays, it is incredibly encouraging. Malachi Starks was doing that a season ago. Got a chance to catch up with Malachi after the game on Saturday night. Asked him a few questions, and we'll play that audio and video for you right now.
I'm a master at it, and I want to be a master at everything, so I think that every aspect you can probably think of is what I'm trying to work on.
As a group tonight, it seems like you made a bunch of plays. Tyke made plays. Javon made plays. How good do you think the sort of safety, specifically, the safeties and the starters, can be with what you guys bring out there?
We can be as good as we want to be. We have the leadership to do it. We have the talent to do it. So, the guys that we have are also what they do. So we just got to be willing to come out and just be who we are.
How good did it feel to get out there and actually play a game, even if it is something that's
it's been such a long time since we played a game against another team. So just being able to come out and just fly around the half line, they had a really good team that had great athletes. So just for us to be able to come out and just fly around the half line and see who we are, it was amazing.
Year two for you, what's the biggest difference you feel like in yourself from first game last year against Oregon when you made that big interception to where you are today?
I would say trusting myself and within my teammates. I feel like my teammates trust me a lot more to do what I need to be at certain points and just do what I need to do. So I feel like that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, so chatting there with Malachi there, you hear him talk about how the safety room is the sky is the limit there. And based on what we saw from that group on Saturday, I have to agree there. I thought the corners looked good as well. Kamari Lassiter out there, that's an encouraging sign given he'd been dealing with a little bit of a foot injury throughout fall camp. And then Dalen Everett getting a lot of the reps there. Julian Humphrey rotating in as well. I thought A.J. Harris looked good for the most part. We got to see him work with the second team there. So they've got a lot of talented cornerbacks. They've got a lot of talented safeties and defensive backs there. And I was texting with one of my buddies today. The defense certainly looked apart on Saturday. And while the front seven probably isn't going to be as good as that 2021 defense, I think the secondary is significantly better with the talent that they have back there. And I think as the season goes on and you see this defense get better and better, which I expect them to each and every week, by the end of the season, it would not surprise me if Georgia's able to stay healthy, especially on the defensive line, if we do start to hear more and more of those comparisons to that 2021 team there. So first winner there, the UGA safeties. I thought the defensive backs as a whole played great. Key stat there to know, in the first half, UT Martin had 11 passing attempts for a grand total of 14 yards. Now, obviously, Georgia's going to play better offenses going forward, but to get that kind of production from your defensive backfield, I think is something you're very much encouraged by to open the season there. You can only play who's in front of you. And I think that was the case on Saturday night. Our first loser here, and it's not even necessarily totally his fault, but I've seen the message board comments. I have talked with friends about it. It's Mike Bobo here. Georgia offense only scores 17 points rather in the first half. There were some execution errors. Again, I don't know how much of that falls on Mike Bobo. I'm not sure what Mike Bobo could do to change the way that the offensive line, specifically the interior of the offensive line, was playing last night. I'm not sure what Mike Bobo could do about an overthrow to Arian Smith down the field, missing Arian Smith in the end zone, miscommunication on a key third down between Dominic Lovett and Carson Beck there. 559 yards of total offense for Georgia last night. That would have been the fourth most during the 2022 season when Todd Monken was the offensive coordinator there. But I think, Mike Bobo very clearly has a long way to go in terms of winning over the Georgia fan base. There were some people that you could hear in the press box, not in the press box specifically, but adjacent to it in the stands both above and below, that were quick to come with boos. And look, I mean, that's the reality when you're at a program like Georgia and you've won 2 straight national championships. The bar is incredibly high, and Mike Bobo knows that and understands that. I will say when he was walking through the press box, coming back from halftime, he had his head buried in stat sheets, looked to be maybe, play sheets or things like that, sort of like he was searching for answers there. And the Georgia offense did look better in the second half. And I expect this Georgia offense to look better over the course of the season. Carson Beck admitted afterwards he was a little bit nervous, a little bit anxious there in the first quarter. Didn't really settle in until the second quarter. His real fourth drive of the night, I would say, was when he probably started to finally feel comfortable there, which, again, makes sense. It was his first start since 2019, November 8th, and a lot has happened since then. And to get some of that rust off, to have and feel some pressure, not from the offensive line, of course, though the offensive line itself did not have a great game and very well could have been a loser submission here tonight. Just to sort of feel live bullets again, I think is something that takes some getting used to when you've been away from football for that long. And so I think with Carson, B- effort from him, missed on some throws, but didn't turn the ball over. I thought showed some good things with his legs that he's going to be able to do and translates into playing better athletes over the course of the season. He's going to have to get on the same page with Arian Smith and Dominic Lovett. He was working without Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint and Ladd McConkey. I thought Georgia got really good things out of Mekhi Muse and CJ Smith there. So a mixed bag of sorts with this passing offense. Running game, Georgia's just going to be limited with what they have at running back. I thought Roger Robinson had some nice moments last night. You like what you see out of Kendall Milton when he rips off that 37-yard run, even though it's clear he's not healthy and is still in his process of getting back to that. I think the fact that he went out there and played was, as Kirby Smart said, something he wanted to do. And it shows the kind of leader he is, that Kendall's going to want to be out there and know that resting's not going to do him a whole lot of good. He needs to go out there and show that he can play through some of those injuries. And that's what he did last night. And so you're encouraged by that. I think you're encouraged by what you saw from Roger Robinson. 7 touches for Cash Jones there, used, I think, mostly effectively. I don't know how much he's going to be getting goal line carries like he did right before halftime, but that was something I think Georgia had sort of pre-installed or made that decision to where, and you've seen this before, if a team picks up chunk plays to get close to the goal line, what they'll do is they'll run hurry up and try and sneak into the end zone with a quick run or a quick play there. The problem was that there was 25 seconds left and no timeouts, and if you get stuffed there, you sort of start getting in a situation where you're going to have to think and make plays quickly. So Georgia ends up spiking the ball on second down and then incomplete pass on third down there. So not great red zone execution there at the end. If that's a touchdown, it's a different looking ball game. Ultimately, Georgia scores 48 points, gets things going in the second half. I don't want to say they're holding things back, but I do think that they can open up the offense a little bit more for Carson moving forward. And again, I think depending on the opponent, you're going to see them do that. It was UT Martin last night. This was not an Oregon. This was not a Clemson who Georgia will open the season with next year. You do not need to show all your cards and play all your hands to start the season there. So you want to see more from this offense. I understand you want to see them start faster. You want to see Carson, I think, settle in and get over some of the hiccups, and he'll do that with reps. But I think the big thing and one of my bigger takeaways from last night, no matter what the job and what the final score and what the final yards say for the Georgia offense, Mike Bobo is going to be judged very critically throughout this season. And, that's just sort of something he has to live with. And he knows this and he understands this. And is it fair? No. He's probably paying for, what happened when he was first learning as an offensive coordinator at the University of Georgia from 2007 to 2014. And while, most don't reflect fondly on that 2014 season, that team did average 42 points a game. They scored 48 last night. 41 of those came from the offensive side of the ball. Easily could have been a higher number had they chosen to sort of play things out and open it up a little bit. But Mike Bobo is very clearly, I think, going to have to prove himself to not just this Georgia team, but the Georgia fan base as a whole over the course of the season. And this is going to be something, look, when things are going well, as they were for the most part last night, you're still going to hear people tripping and you're still going to have people that are unhappy and have to prove it. And I think that's something to watch there as well. On a more positive note, winner, the UGA tight ends. I think, Brock Bowers, we don't need to say a whole lot more from that performance last night. 5 catches, 77 yards. He also had a 3-yard rushing touchdown. I know there were some people wondering if Georgia was actually going to use him as a running back. They did, not just in that goal line situation there, but also there was another series where they had motioned him into the backfield and actually had him lined up at running back and dumped a check down off to him there. Kirby Smart mentioned in the postgame that they actually limited how often they went to him, and I think that's probably pretty smart in a game against UT Martin where you don't need to expose Brock to a lot of hits and probably keep the wear and tear on him down over the course of the season. You want to, if you feel the need that you have to rely on a player like Brock Bowers, you want to do that in bigger games like a Tennessee and SEC championship game, so to speak, and not feel the need to do that against UT Martin. And yes, I think part of that is no Ladd McConkey last night dealing with a back injury, no Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint dealing with internal team discipline, aka suspension. So I think when this receiver room gets back to full strength, and if you potentially continue to see things from Makai Muse, who had a 53-yard touchdown, from CJ Smith, who I thought really opened some eyes last night with the way that he played, specifically in the second half there, you feel better. You don't have to rely on the tight ends, specifically Brock, as much. But here's Brock Bowers talking about his play last night, his performance, what he liked, and what he thought of Carson Beck making his first career start.
That's what's so important, and with the depth we have, it's just not really an issue. And just watching those dudes break plays like Kendall and Rod coming off, like Kendall's coming off a hamstring. He's been playing really good.
How about breaking the 54-yard touchdown? I mean, how much does that match what y'all have seen from him this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, he just comes in and grinds every day, and everyone's so happy to see him out there making plays and just doing what he does in practice and being able to showcase that.
As someone who clearly loves to play football, how good did you feel to get back out there and play again and have a game situation like that?
I mean, it's always fun. I mean, it's so much better not to hit the same dudes over and over again. And the crowd was all into it. It was a lot of fun.
What'd you make of Carson's performance today and making that first career start?
I mean, I thought he did pretty good. I mean, he was our whole game plan get the ball to athletes in space, and that's we tried to do that tonight. I mean, we're just gonna get better from here.
This week, when did you know you were going to get that rushing attempt there in the red zone, and what did you think when you scored on that rushing touchdown there?
I mean, we had that plan for a little bit, and as soon as we called it, I was like, I didn't get in the end zone. I mean, I got my legs got clipped a little bit, and I did a flip in the air, but it was fun. Yeah.
So yeah, you hear Brock talk about his rushing attempt there, talk about Makai Muse, talk about Carson Beck. One other thing, Oscar Delp last night, 2 catches, 24 yards. Heavily involved in the offense early on. They opened the game in 12 personnel. I guess it would be 2 personnel, no running backs, 2 tight ends. They played Oscar Delp quite a bit last night, and I think that's an encouraging sign for him. Did have the touchdown catch from Brock Vandegrift there in the fourth quarter, so he gets into the end zone. Again, expecting him to be Darnell Washington is unfair. As Oscar Delp has said, in August, he's just going to be the best Oscar Delp that he can be. And I think that was enough for Georgia last night, and I'm excited to see him continue to grow and become a part of this Georgia offense. I thought he held up well in terms of blocking. Now, obviously, he's not Darnell. Again, no one is. But it's clear that Delp is going to continue to be a big part of this Georgia offense moving forward. I thought you liked what you saw from him last night as well, in addition to the usual brilliance from one Brock Bowers. Our next loser, we usually like to go big picture here, and that is Georgia's schedule because while, yes, most of the SEC teams are playing cupcakes, some of the teams that actually went out of conference and scheduled, Power 5 teams in week one that Georgia will see later in the season, quite frankly, did not look very good. We'll touch quickly here on Tennessee. They blow up Virginia. Virginia might be the worst team in the Power 5 this year. That program is in a tough shape, and obviously thoughts and prayers continue to go out to that community after the horrific tragedy last November. And as Tony Elliott, I think, rightly said after the game, the fact that these guys are even playing football and have the ability to do so, I think you treat that as a win there. But from a Tennessee side of things, I don't know how much you can take away from that game, just given the talent edge and where those two programs are. We're going to learn a lot more about Tennessee as the course of the season goes on. But two SEC East teams that I think some people thought, had a chance of pulling upsets, and I certainly did, in Florida and South Carolina. Both, I think, have really discouraging performances. We'll touch on Florida first here. Look, we've heard a lot, and I've said a lot about the way that Dan Mullen left that program and the shape that it was in. They lost that game on Thursday night, and that game was as lopsided as it was because that team was poorly coached. And look, Billy Napier has invested heavily in terms of getting analysts there and having a bigger coaching staff. Utah did not out-talent that Florida team. Talent, in my opinion, was not the issue on Thursday night. There were some pretty egregious coaching things that happened there. And the offensive line wasn't great. They could not run the ball, which I think is a big problem because I do think that Montrell Johnson and Trevor Etienne, are two really talented running backs, but they just were not able to get the ground game going. That put a lot of stress on them. And then, again, I think when you fall behind 24-3, you're trailing essentially the whole fourth quarter. That's not how you want to use Graham Mertz. An interception that came off a deflected pass earlier in the game, but, 4th and 14, you're calling a screen pass. And again, I think that just goes back to the fact that this team couldn't block and really couldn't handle Utah's front. And Utah's a good physical program, but Georgia is another level. I think LSU, with what they have defensively, is another level ahead of what Florida is going to see later in this season. 2 number 3s on a punt, that's self-explanatory. That just can't happen there. And so, giving up a touchdown on the very first play of the game, that's just not coming out ready to play. And look, this is a Florida program. It seems like it's going to be a long year. I was maybe a little bit more encouraged about what I saw from a talent perspective against Utah. Now, granted, they were playing without Cam Rising. I totally get that. Florida, if the coaching continues to be as not great as it was on Thursday night, it is going to be an incredibly long year for Billy Napier at Florida. South Carolina got a chance to sort of speed run through their game against North Carolina today, 31-17. I was impressed by what I saw from Spencer Rattler. I know I've been critical of him in this space before, but I thought given the circumstances, he actually held up pretty well and looked like an improved football player. The problem for them is they cannot block at all. Credit to Mike Griffith. He said he was concerned about this offensive line going into the season. I think it's worse than that. This is a North Carolina team that has just not been good defensively in a while. I believe the stat was they only had 3. They didn't have a game last year where they had more than 3 sacks. They had 9 yesterday against South Carolina there. We'll see how good that defense is. 31-17 final score. South Carolina's defense, I actually thought, played a good bit better down the stretch. They're getting 2 second-half interceptions to Drake May. But you're a South Carolina team. If you're going to be that bad on the offensive line, it's going to be real tough when you have to go play Georgia, when you have to go play Texas A&M. Because, again, similarly to what we just talked about with Florida, if those are the sort of lines that you're struggling with now, it's only going to get more difficult as the season goes along, and potentially you have to deal with injuries there. So those two teams had a chance to go make out-of-conference statements, unranked teams that are probably in that 26 to 35 range in terms of talent, could potentially jump up in the AP poll, but they end up losing, and quite frankly, both by double digits. Both were, I think, deserved double-digit losses there. I know South Carolina had some chances late. Shane Beamer once again went viral in post-game. It always seems like if there's a coach who's going to make a viral comment, good chance it's Shane Beamer there, and so something to watch going forward. Georgia plays South Carolina in 2 weeks. Based on what I saw today, even with some of the questions that we've seen from Georgia, that South Carolina team is going to be in for a rude awakening when they come to Athens on the 16th there. So our last winner here, and I'm not doing this to spew quarterback controversy. This is just an opinion and thought and reflection that I had coming out of the game. I thought Brock Vandagriff had some juice. I'm not going to say he's going to unseat Carson Beck. I don't think that. I think Carson Beck is very clearly ahead of where Brock Vandagriff is. It's very telling that Brock did not play in the first half. Again, part of that can be chalked up to execution issues with Georgia, but they brought him in when it was 31-0 in the third quarter. His first completion is a 56-yard bomb to Ra Thomas. His second completion is a touchdown pass to Oscar Delp. It was exactly the prettiest thing, but it was an open pass, and he hit him for a touchdown, which is exactly what you're looking to do. Kirby Smart touched on it afterwards. The offensive line let him down a little bit in the first drive there. You saw a little bit of his running ability, his mobility that I think paid off there. Gunnar Stockton similarly was able to move the football for Georgia when he came in there at the end of the game. You see why Georgia has sort of a quarterback competition to see who's going to be that number 2 quarterback. But I think for a guy who had not completed a pass in his career, you like what you see in the 2 drives that you got out of Brock Vandagriff. They're going to continue, I think, to allow both Vandagriff and Stockton to open it up in the second halves of these games to get them real reps. It's not just turning around and handing the football off. Sort of, think back to what you saw from Carson Beck a year ago against Vanderbilt. Those reps, I think, really mattered when it came time for him to ultimately become and win the starting quarterback job. And I think similarly, these reps in the event, as Kirby Smart touched on last night, if Carson Beck is unable to go, if he's still having some of the execution issues that we've seen him have in week 1, the plays that you saw from Vandagriff in particular last night are encouraging. I think, going forward, if Georgia continues to get up big, which I expect them to do in each of the next 3 games, you do see him continue to play in the second half. I'll be interested in ultimately seeing, do they start giving Vandagriff reps in the first half, a la what they did with Stetson Bennett against South Carolina in 2021. Now, he threw an interception when he came in for South Carolina, but when JT got hurt again, Stetson Bennett was ready to step in and lead that Georgia football team. And so I think you've seen the value of that before. Kirby Smart certainly understands that. I think, again, as something he has stressed all offseason, they feel like they can win with all 3 of these quarterbacks. I certainly am inclined to believe that off base what we saw last night with the performances from Vandagriff and from Stockton. Again, I'm not saying Vandagriff is going to unseat Carson Beck. I don't expect that to happen right now. All I'm saying is that in the limited playing time he got with what he was able to do, I was impressed with what I saw from Brock Vandagriff. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and open it up to questions, comments, thoughts. I'm sure you guys have some things on your mind coming out of the first game there for Georgia, a 48-7 win over UT Martin. Georgia plays Ball State this coming weekend. A noon kickoff. I know not everyone may know that, but it's a great slate of games this upcoming weekend. So you watch the Georgia game, you get that out of the way. It's Ball State. They lost 44-14 to Kentucky yesterday, and you get a chance to watch some of those other big games: Alabama, Texas, Iowa, Iowa State, Texas, Miami, Auburn going to Cal for some reason. Certainly something to watch there. So let's see. Thoughts, comments, questions. Crow King, yeah, Auburn is probably the first game that you're going to get a sort of an idea as far as what this Georgia team has. And they play Cal this week, and Cal looked really good against North Texas in week 1. Now, again, it's North Texas, but when you're a 7-point favorite and you win by 37 and you score 58 points in the process with your new offensive coordinator, I do think that says a lot. And that is certainly something to watch there. Mike Brown, I see your comment about Austin Blaske. I'll say, yeah, second team offensive line did not inspire a lot of confidence last night. I know Blaske had a holding penalty, and I believe Micah Morris did as well when they came in there. So, Georgia's got to get that cleaned up. Offensive line wasn't great last night. They'll probably be the first to tell you that. They've got to specifically in that center guard, interior line have to be better there. I did think, and I did want to touch on this, I have a story on the site. You can go watch the full interview on DawgNation YouTube page. Devin Willock wearing the number 77 jersey, I think is really, really cool. They touched on what they're going to do with that jersey every week. I think it's awesome. I thought the comments that Truss made about it after the game, I thought were really powerful, and it should not be lost that, speaking about a friend that way and doing so in the manner in which Truss did, I thought was really cool. And I would encourage you to go check that out from the DawgNation YouTube page. Credit there to Jeff Santel for filming it and friend Sarah Spencer for some of the questions she was able to ask. Let's see. Let's keep going here. G Bama boy. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what this is in connection to, but execution could have been sharper last night for Carson Beck and the Georgia offense, specifically in the first half there. The Dominic Lovett play, I don't know if that's on Lovett. I don't know if it's on Beck. Either way, it's on both of them. It was miscommunication. It was an easy third down pickup. Instead, it's a punt for Georgia there. There was a play at the end of the half where Arian Smith was wide open in the end zone. Carson just missed him, overthrew him. I know there was another play earlier in the half where Dominic Lovett was uncovered near the goal line. Carson was late seeing it. Defender's able to come over, and while Lovett got his hands on the ball was knocked away. That probably should have still been a touchdown, but maybe Carson Beck recognizes that earlier. Again, it was his first start in almost 4 years, and so there's going to be some growing pains there. I expect him to get better next week against Ball State. And if we're still having some of these misfires like we saw last night, maybe then you start to worry about it a little bit more. But I'm willing to give Carson the benefit of the doubt, given it was his first career start. And there are strides to be had there. Yes, Jalen Milroe I thought looked good against Alabama, but he's at a different point in his development. He got to start the game last year against Texas A&M and filled in against Arkansas late when working with a first-team offense. So he's at a little bit of a different point in his development there. So let's see. Yeah, William, this is a good comment here. Georgia's got to get healthy. I thought they made some strides last night. It's good to see Kamari Lassiter out there playing as well as he did. Shimon London being out there is encouraging, even if it's only in a third down role. Honestly, he's that good, to where you could just limit him to that there and he'd still find a way to make an impact on the game. But obviously, you want to get him back to where he is an every down linebacker for this team. That's when this defense, I think, is going to be at its best. Lad McConkey, he's a game 13, game 14, game 15 player, and you need to have him healthy and not so much battling injury over the course of the season. So if you can ease him into it and not use him in games you're going to win easily without him, I think that's something you certainly probably do. I expect Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint to come back this week. I would probably say the same for Dejan Edwards. Kirby Smart did say he could have gone last night, but the senior running back did not play as he recovers from an MCL sprain. Kendall Milton, we'll see where his hamstring is at. Kirby did say it tightened up over the course of the game last night, but I think that is certainly something to watch there. The fact that he gutted it out, led Georgia in rushing, I think is an encouraging sign for what Milton wants to do and ultimately as well his leadership ability for Georgia this season. Let's see. Thoughts, comments. Let's see. Keep scrolling. William Concha. Yeah, Carson's still the starter. It was not great. I wouldn't use that adjective. I, again, said B- earlier. Subpar performance maybe feels a bit strong. He was 21 of 31 for 294 yards, no interceptions, rushing touchdown, passing touchdown to Mekhi Muse. Again, because it wasn't, Stetson Bennett against UAB in 2021, things look different. But again, if the roles were switched, we'd be like, we got to see Carson Beck if Brock Vandagriff had that sort of performance. And that's just the reality of being the starting quarterback at Georgia. Again, I think as he gets more reps, as he gets more comfortable with this first-team offense in real-life game action, I think you're going to see Carson continue to get better. I'll also say I think Georgia can open up the offense a little bit more for him than it did yesterday. And again, you're not going to show everything that you can do in a week one game against an FCS school. There's a reason why you sort of build up to that and develop your offense over the course of the season. And as Kirby Smart says, get better every week. Georgia fully intends on doing that. I think Carson fully intends on doing that there as well. Let's see. Comments, questions. Chris Slim, I do sort of agree with this idea here. Georgia found success when rushing to the outside. I think that speaks to, the strengths of Amarius Mims and Ernest Green. Kirby said he was going to go back and watch the film. It was not a great performance for the guys in the interior of that line, and you can blame play calling, sure. We've got a guy that started 31 games in Cedric Van Pran, a guy that started Tate missed one game last year, so I think that was his 16th career start. Xavier Truss is a double-digit start guy. When you have those guys not winning and not getting movement to the level that they are capable of, it's just hard. As a former offensive lineman, if you're getting beat inside it's really hard to overcome that and generate much of anything from an offensive standpoint. And again, on the one hand, it's UT Martin. It's not a whole lot to take away from the game. On the other, I understand why some people would want to see maybe a little bit more given the level of opponent. If you're finishing with 559 yards of offense against Auburn and you have those kinds of performances, you're probably thrilled. When it's only 17-0 at halftime against UT Martin, you understand why some may not exactly be in love with what you saw there. Jonathan Moore. So actually, Georgia was never going to be playing Oklahoma tomorrow. That game is always scheduled to be week 2 this coming week, October 9th. Oklahoma did come away with a 73-0 win over Arkansas State. An impressive performance there. If Georgia were playing Oklahoma, I can imagine they would have played a good bit better. We've seen that before from Georgia. I think, and this will be a story I write this week, I think Georgia wishes they were playing Oklahoma this week. You would find out a lot more about them. And I have plenty of questions about this Oklahoma team still. I get, that Georgia has to be better, and they know that, and they will. But I think if they're playing Oklahoma this week, if they're playing Oklahoma on Saturday, I think you see a much crisper Georgia football team, certainly based on what we've seen before. And again, this season in particular, it is going to be a marathon. You want to be peaking at the end of the year, and there's a reason no one has won 3 straight national championships in the AP poll era, and Georgia is attempting to do that. They know they got to be playing their best. I wrote this in one of my stories. You don't want to run a 4-minute mile out of the gate in a marathon, but you don't want to run a 10-minute mile either. And so, yesterday was probably an 8-minute mile. If you're Georgia, you probably wish you were running closer to a 6-minute pace. That's enough running talk for right now. But again, I think Georgia's got a long way to go. The fact that they won 41 points, you take that. There are things you can get better on and improve on, and I think you absolutely take that moving forward while still noting some of the progress that was made yesterday. Let's see. We might call it tonight. You've got BA tomorrow morning on DawgNation Daily. I know it's Labor Day for a lot of people out there. It's a regular football Monday for us here at DawgNation, so plenty to continue to work on. I know we've got a press conference tomorrow with Kirby Smart, players there as well. Georgia takes on Ball State this coming weekend. Week 2 of the Georgia football season. That game is scheduled for a 12 p.m. kickoff in Sanford Stadium. Should be, around 85, 88, 89 degrees at kickoff there. Certainly something to watch going forward. But I think the big thing, again, it's another game for Georgia. You're going to want to see them go out there. If they win 48-7 again and do a lot of the same things, we'll be having a lot of the same conversations. But I don't think, as one of our commenters pointed out, and I agree with earlier, you probably don't learn a whole lot about this team until they go on the road against Auburn later on in the month. And quite frankly, we don't know what this Auburn team is going to look like. They played UMass yesterday. We don't really know how good that team is going to be. It's just more you're banking on the fact and the history that going on the road to Jordan-Hare is not an easy proposition, even if Georgia has had a lot of success there as of late. So certainly something to watch there. DawgNation Daily tomorrow with Brandon Adams, on the beat with Mike Griffith, Before the Hedges with Jeff Santana on Wednesday. Check out his recruiting update from Sanford Stadium yesterday. Some really good stuff on Dilton Raiola. Really cool story on Daniel Calhoun there as well. Plenty to check out. We've got happy hour. Had a great time at Marlowe's this past Thursday. We'll have another happy hour program this coming Thursday. And then obviously Georgia takes on Ball State on Saturday, September 9th, 12 p.m. Eastern time. This game actually is on TV, going to be on SEC Network. You're not going to have to watch a YouTube video to figure out how to watch it there as well. Georgia wins week 1, 48-7 against UT Martin. See, I didn't even have my sharpest week 1 performance here. So plenty of room to get better for myself and the Georgia football program. This has been a DawgNation production. My name is Connor Riley. This is Connor in Coverage. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We will be back here next Sunday night at 7:30. Plenty more to talk about.